Yeah. Well, I mean, my first step was actually to share it with other artists. So before I even put music out, I was starting to show artists I was working with on other projects, sort of what I was doing personally. And so I think maybe someone mentioned it earlier, kind of like building a community of artists around what you're doing. That also has really worked for me because once they get excited about it, then they'll help to start encouraging you, and that's how I ended up kind of meeting the folks at Groover as well, as just other artists that were excited about what I was doing. And then additionally, that has sort of been a massive part of it, is working with Groover to make sure the playlists are hearing what's going on and make sure that they're kind of aware of the music that's coming out and what the plans are and things like that. So Groover has been really helpful that way. And then also to be able to just kind of play shows consistently enough that people are engaging with you on a personal level. And like Dorian said, being authentic about that is really important. So being able to kind of invite people into your city and say, "Hey, come see what I'm doing," and see the people that are around me. That really helps to get people to listen to what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Dorian, do you have any tips from the inside of Groover on maybe how to use the platform, and other general tips about promotion to help artists having their music heard?
Yes, I think what something that's super important is to try to define what you're doing in the ears and the eyes of other people. It doesn't mean that you need to put yourself in a box or like define you too much, but you have to think about, okay, some other people, tastemakers or people who are going to try to describe what I do will want to describe me with words that people can understand. So in that sense, it's very important to try to identify in what like category, what kind of like genre and subgenre your music is, so that you'll be able to reach out to the people that are more likely to appreciate that music. And we can see that on Groover is that artists who take the time to really try to define the subgenres, like if they do like indie pop or indie rock, or it's very important to understand that part to be sure to target the right people and have the best possible results on the platform. The other thing I would say is to try to like add a bio, add a pitch to your campaign, add your social media links. And it's like an advice I would say for a piece of advice that I would say for everything is when you're on Spotify for artists, when you're on Instagram, when you're on different platforms, it's always link your other platforms, because someone might discover your music somewhere but want to like know more about you somewhere else. So it's very important to do these links between your different platforms, so that you show you're not losing someone who might be interested in knowing more about your music. So that's like a big part of like the advice I would say here. Another thing is to of course follow up with the people that like your music and say they like it. They'll still like very much like solicited. So if you see that someone has liked music, I would like really put energy in like following up with them and like entertaining that relationship. um I think this always with this, you already be able to stand out on the platform. And there's of course a learning curve, which means that like if you use it like on more and more campaigns, you're likely to receive better and better results, because you're likely to understand better and better who you want to reach out with your music. So it's also a great way to understand better where you fit. And if you change, of course, what you're doing, you can try like with new targets and things like that. So that would be my my pieces of advice here.
And Damien, you work with artists daily, and you work probably with different types of projects, music genre. So what are your best advice when it comes to promotion concretely? Like, how did you yourself work with those artists? How did you help them grow their project?
Yeah, I think it's really important to map out your 6 to 12-month plan and reverse engineer it from there. So look at the next 12 months. How many singles do I want to release? What do I have budget for? How many demos do I have? What's reasonable? Then map it out and go, okay, between March and July next year, I want to put a song out in March and there's another song out in July, and I want to build some momentum. I might not have enough fan base to do my own show yet, but okay, I need to find a support tour. So then you can kind of look at people announcing shows during that time, reach out, and so forth. So you can kind of reverse engineering these kind of tentpole moments throughout your year and kind of mapping it out and no one's going to like, you're kind of in control of your, your strategy and where you're going. So having a kind of skeleton plan of what your timeline looks like is going to be really useful. So you kind of know what you need to be actioning and what you need to be working on, because sometimes you might feel a bit lost as an artist, what to activate. And so that kind of, when you wake up, you can go, this week I need to be working on this, and these things sometimes need a really long lead time to be working on. And you might be like, okay, I need to save $2,000 to be able to work with these pluggers because I've got a song that I think in summer is going to be really good for radio. So then you can kind of put money aside, save up for it, find out, take meetings with people, know who you might want to work with. It kind of just like gives you like a to-do list, like, so reverse engineering things and looking at what other people are doing and kind of seeing kind of how you can maybe do similar. Another way is like looking at platforms like Groover, like Warm Radio Monitoring, Yesta's company. They've got, like, if you sign up to Warm and you do a radio campaign, you can see all your radio plays, and they're people you can follow up with. They've got a fantastic database of email contacts of all the music directors. So for like the price of just registering a song for like €7, you can get access to this whole database, and you can service your new music out. It's like categorized by genre as well. And so you can then follow up with people who are playing your music and start growing that community. Maybe hosting a radio show might be something you can do, and you can be like, wow, these people play my song like 10 times a week. I would have never known if I wasn't monitoring it. So kind of also taking the responsibility of looking into those back end kind of things, what your YouTube studio looks like, what your TikTok studio looks like, all these different back ends, and seeing how your content is working, what promotional tools are working well. And I'd kind of also say, like, if you are starting out, try to look at one or two or three, like, don't feel like you have to be an expert at everything when it comes to social media. Maybe you be like, actually, I'm in the studio a lot making music. I can just live stream on Twitch and put that up there. And everyone starts from somewhere, and it helps develop an audience. And these platforms have creator funds. So like, if you're a regular person on Twitch, after 12 months, you could present a case to them, and they have like money to pay artists full-time wages to be on their platform. So there's all these different ways you can be, and that's kind of like a niche kind of thing, being on Twitch. Other platforms like YouTube and all these things, they have creator funds to help fund artists to kind of create content, be on these platforms. So kind of maybe looking and specializing into like certain ones and being kind of specific. And then once that fan starts to like ignite, so once the flame starts to ignite, if you're fanning it, you can kind of then expand into other areas. But don't feel like you have to be the jack of all trades. Even people with the label team and a lot of people working for them can't master everything. So maybe just start small. And if you feel overwhelmed, that's okay. It's quite very normal. So maybe just see what you can do each day. And that's why also, like, going back to what I first said, having that long-term plan really helps, because it helps kind of guide you where you need to go.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the warm presentation. So yeah, Jasper, we'd love to hear your opinion on this. So there are a lot of ways to promote your music, but why would you say radio is still an important mean to get your music discovered by new audiences today?
I think radio is still a quite important format as a lot of people actually discover the music, discover a song on radio for the first time. And there is a connection, for example, to Shazam and stuff like that. But more importantly, I think it's radio is a wave where people actually feel they are part of something. If you play a song on Spotify, it's just you playing this in your echo chamber in the kitchen or while running or whatever. But if you're listening to a radio, you're actually part of a broader community, even though you do not see that. And I think that's something a lot of people like, even though it's subconsciously in that sense. And then of course also radio usually have quite a lot of listeners. So whereas streaming obviously usually only have one listener or a few, with radio, it's quite certain that you do not only have one listener. So whether that's 1,000 listeners in a very specific niche around a certain genre, or whether that's let's say 1 million people on a commercial radio, it's still a lot of people usually the way you expose your music to at one time.
Yeah, definitely. So can you can you get us a bit through War, maybe, like how it works, how can artists can leverage it to promote their music?
Yeah. So basically, anyone can track any song. That also leads a little bit into what Damien briefly mentioned, but it also means that you can monitor other similar songs. So let's say, as an artist, you release a specific, let's say, a track similar to Tame Impala or whatever. Then you could find another, you could monitor Tame Impala or other songs that are similar to this kind of vibe or this energy. And then you can see what radios plays these songs, which of course gives the artist, for example, a much better opportunity of hyper targeting their marketing efforts or promotion efforts to specific radios that actually support this, let's say, artist size or this particular genre. And I think this is also important, generally speaking, to do as much as you can yourself before you start, for example, hiring radio promoters and stuff. Because the more you can do yourself, the easier it will get when you actually put spending behind it.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you? So Worm is also used to track where my radio is being broadcasted. So is it only focusing more on like local radios or also global ones? Is it for like European artists, or can just anyone use it?
Yeah, good question. So we strive ourselves to monitor as many radios as possible. So we monitor everything from the biggest US radios, Sirius XM, for example, and Capital, iHeart, Kiss, etc. But we then also monitor smaller niche radios, college radios, community radios, etc. And where we differentiate a bit from our competitors is that a lot of the coverage of radios we monitor is actually driven by our customers. So we get a new client in Nigeria, and he would request these 5 radios to be monitored, which we do not cover, for example. Then in that way, we will actually just continue to develop a bigger and consistently relevant coverage of radios. So we do not just monitor a lot of radios that could be, for example, relevant in specific markets, but we actually monitor the ones that different communities see as relevant in their home markets.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. And maybe one question for Jasper, but also actually all of you, if you have an opinion about this, is how do I reach out to like media outlets, industry professionals, radio station, also playlists? Like, how do I get my music in front of these people? Because no one, like when you're starting a new project, you don't necessarily have those contact, the network. So how do I reach out to these people? So I don't know.
I'm happy to jump in now that I'm already here.
Go ahead, Jesper.
I would say, spend more time investigate who you're communicating to than what you communicate in that sense, because it's like, well, not that, but it's like it's important that you, for example, if you send your music presentation wise to a radio or a curator at a radio, it's quite important that you are, let's say, specific and in what you're communicating, and you know who you're communicating to. So is this a radio that is playing this particular genre of music? Is it a certain curator or gatekeeper who likes something similar? Or so the more, let's say, the more groundwork you can do, the better chances you have of getting breakthrough. So whatever you do not mass spam or BCC just to a lot of people at one time, whether that's radio or or other people for that matter. It's just important that you are very specific on who you communicating to, because it's very transparent if you are just mass spamming. So less is more, probably.
Oh, and you seem to agree on that specific point. Do you want to comment on that, or give us your opinion on how you did that? How did you reach to some people in the industry, create a network as well?
Yeah, I agree. I think sending out mass emails is not a good idea. Uh, but I do think that once you have met someone in person and you've actually had a face-to-face, which a lot of times that can happen just through going to different events. I know Groover hosts events in New York often, things like that. Being able to kind of be in the right rooms where you know there are people you want to meet. Doing some research too, and like if you see someone is going to be, even right now, for instance, like, you know, doing some research and seeing who we all are on this panel and being able to know kind of the background of like who's in these rooms can help to give a sense of like who you want to reach out to. And then when you have met them, you can actually follow up, you know, maybe a couple of times and just say, hey, we met in person and this is what I'm doing. And feel free to, you know, like share what you're up to, because I think it never hurts to kind of just send a message that says, hey, I just did this really cool thing and you might want to, you know, check it out. But doing that in a way that's personal and not like kind of just to everyone is important for sure.
Not too much spamming. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So Damien, what do you think about that? How do you work usually with the artists that you are guiding?
So I've worked with a lot of artists who've gone from, you know, when I started working with them, don't get radio play or DSP editorial support, and then we can kind of secure that support from them. And there's a few key factors that come into play here. One is timeline. So when it comes to DSP pitching, you want to kind of look at 4 to 6 weeks out from release, pitching a record into these streaming platforms. These people need time to listen, and sometimes you're not getting the support simply because you pitched it 2 weeks out, and they simply haven't got the chance to listen to it. No one's actually heard it at those teams. And then on that topic is, who do you work with for distribution is a really important question, and it's really important as independent artists that you've got a relationship with your distributor. And if you don't, then that could be part of the reason you might be not getting those big looks, because the distributor's got those relationships at the DSPs like Spotify, Apple Music. And of course you can use Spotify for artist tools, but these distributors are sending a priority list each week of artists they kind of are working with. So if you're kind of working with a TuneCore or something, their service is kind of just to get your music up there, but they kind of don't provide that artist marketing services. So potentially you might want to look at people who can provide that. And sometimes, a lot of the times, those distributors, though, would want to kind of see some momentum already building on your streaming profile. So that's where Groover is a really fantastic tool to kind of get your monthly listeners up. So there's kind of some action, because, you know, people need to see some revenue coming in as well, that they can invest some time to help develop you further. The second thing I would say is kind of look at just doing a really simple we talk like in terms of what a pitch email might look like, and you can tailor it. It's important to tailor everything to kind of the situation. But as an artist, sometimes you might get caught up writing too much stuff. Like, keep the emails really short and concise, and then just have a title with your artist name, your Spotify in brackets, how many monthly listeners, your Instagram hyperlinked, how many followers you have, your TikTok, how many followers you have. And then underneath that, just have 5 dot points. Maybe, hey, your song got added to this radio station. Hey, I just toured to XYZ artist. I just sold out my hometown show here, and I've got a new album coming out in April next year, and I'm going to be on cycle. And then you can use that pitch points to pitch for new tours. You can use that to pitching to DSPs. You can use that for pitching out a lot, and it's just really concise. And the industry kind of put concise pitches like that together over time. So it's just something you can just easily copy and paste, and then above that email, you can be like, hey, I've got a new, I want to submit for this tour. I just saw you announce it. Here's a little bit about me. Love to chat further. Or, hey, I've got this new song out. I'd love to, you know, consider it for radio play. Here's a link to like the SoundCloud download link. Also, here's some short highlights of what I've been up to. Just keep it really concise is a really key thing, especially when you're an emerging artist and people might not know about you. It just helps really. People only spend a few seconds kind of glancing over things. So I'll say those are some tools you can use when like kind of pitching out to industry and getting people's attention. And then And then once you have their attention, then you can dive further deeper with them.
Yeah, definitely. Dorian, maybe something to add on the contacting people part?
Yeah, I think it was like very good advice. I think the scarce resource on all sides is time. Time is like it's hard to find time, and especially on the professionals and the creators and the tastemakers side, they receive a lot of emails and people submitting music. So the more you can be precise about what you're doing and highlights the important points, the more you have chances your music is going to get considered. And I think something to keep in mind is the fact that when you're reaching out to someone, to keep in mind my goal is for that person to listen to my music, because your biggest selling point then is going to be, is your music good? If your music is not good, they're not going to be pursuing anything. But at the same time, you need to find a way to get them to listen to your music. So it's how can you do that? So in the same way, like Damien said, in the pitch, you need to have like compelling elements. I think it's also important to say, if you're just starting and you don't have a lot to say about achievements, you can also try to find a way to attract them by being maybe a bit provocative, or like finding a way to attract their attention. It could be a question, it could be something a bit ironic, it could be, I don't know, like something that represents you. But try to getting attention is really like the key here. And that's why like Groover is indeed key. I'm not gonna like elaborate a lot on that, but what we were trying to do was to make sure that the people you reach out to are going to listen to music, are going to actually play it and listen to your track, and then give advice, give feedback. And it's possible that they won't always love your music, they won't always be super detailed about what they're going to say about it, but at least they will listen to your music. So it's the thing to keep in mind here when you're reaching out to people, is how can you get them to listen to your music, and just obsess over that. And one thing that Damien said as well is like, with tools and things and reaching out to people, it's not to think too much about the return on investment first from royalties. Like when you're gonna like invest time and resources on reaching out to people so that add you to your playlist and you get more audience, or even you're going to invest on, I don't know, ads or stuff like that to get more audience and more monthly listeners, the game at first is not going to be here. It's going to be hard for you to recoup your investment at first directly. But if you're able to grow your audience, show that you can grow organically your audience, and show that you have people following your music, it means that you might be able to score more opportunities. You might be able to score some shows. You might be able to score some like festival gigs, or also people that are going to be interested in you because they see you have also organic traction. And one of the things is that with labels also they're going to be looking at that. So what Damien said as well, and what everyone said is that growing your audience is not only about like the direct return on investment, but it's about building up something that will attract things to you. Then it's like starting by yourself going to find things, so that then in the end you're in a situation where things come your way, more like people reach out to you to offer opportunities.
I've just quickly added something that sometimes doesn't get discussed as well, is making sure you properly mix and master your music. The curators can tell whether it's been mixed or mastered properly, and you might have a fantastic song, but it's not hitting those things. And these DSPs and radio stations have got to hit certain standard qualities, and sometimes those have been the things getting in the way, and you're just not sure. So especially in mastering, it seems like something, but like a good master is not an expensive thing to like invest in. And also sometimes if you haven't got much to talk about, you can put your mixing and mastering people's credits in like brackets next to like who's worked on it, and that can kind of get attention to people to listen to it. So I just thought I'd mention that, because sometimes it's a bit of a thing that people don't think about too much, as a really important thing to get playlisted.
Yeah, definitely super interesting. Yeah, I think like a lot of you said, that like the importance of having a music of good quality, that's like one of the first step to get a great audience. So I think
I think also I just want to highlight a thing that I think is there is a tendency that that artists, they create music, they spend a long time producing it, they invest maybe in some friend making art cover this size gonna be on a DSP, invest in a lot of things, and if not then just time, and then usually when it's ready to be, it's just like it has to go out now. So back to also what Damien said, like, take the time it needs to grow and have the promotional time before the release, and so there's time to work it and not just rush it through just because now you're done with it, and you have to hurry out with the other 150,000 releases today or something. So take your time with the music.
And I would say I would add something to that, which is once you have released your music, the work is starting. It's not stopping. It's like it's not the end. Like once you have released it, you can keep on promoting. You can keep on putting energy and boosting it for months. It could be on the radio. It could be on playlists. Playlists don't really care when the tracks was released. Like the independent playlist creators, they mostly care about like, does the track match their editorial line? We can see like often people who are using Groover for a release that they made like maybe 6 months ago, and they're getting added to new playlists, and they're getting more like things happening 6 months after than before. So the end is not the release date, it's just the starting point. And it's sometimes hard because you put so much energy in like this release that then you want to go and work on something else, but it's actually something. And then there's an interesting stat for that, is that there's one thing is that if you want to trigger some of the algorithmic playlists on Spotify, for example, especially the Discover Weekly ones, you need to reach a certain number of listeners in the first 28 days. And it's important, 28 days, not the next 7 days. So you can keep on building up during those 28 days to reach out those numbers that then will help you bring even more audience to your music. So, and then after that, you can keep on triggering new playlists and algorithmic components to get more and more audience on your music. And it's something that is hard, but be consistent and keep on building up. I see like someone commented about the snowball thing. It's very important. It can be like small like flakes first, but then you will build up your snowball more and more. And it's hard because it's like never ending and you don't know where it's going, but like building up your snowball is really something you can keep in mind.
Yeah, and make sure you tell your team, if you've got a team, if you do get the wins. Like sometimes I'll talk with artists and be like, they've just got added to a support tour or something. I'm like, or they've just got a big radio audition. I'm like, did you tell anyone about it? Like, no. If you want to get like back on the Spotify playlist, like you got to like tell your distributor these things have happened, and they can repitch it. Also with radio campaigns, usually with independent artists, I might wait a few weeks into the campaign before I even go out to radio. Like I want like 3 to 5 kind of dot points or things to talk about that kind of will grab attention if your name itself doesn't grab attention. So yeah, as Dorian's kind of saying, sometimes these things are like 4 to 6 weeks into a campaign, and just remember to keep those communications going, because sometimes you might be achieving these amazing results, but because you haven't told anyone about it, you're not seeing the fruit of that on other platforms.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe one last topic for you all, or one last question, because then we're gonna ask the people joining us if they do have questions for you. But what would be like the number one advice you would give to an indie artist starting like a new project today? And yeah, what would be the one tips you would give? Owen, do you want to lead this one?
Yeah, I think my number one tip would be consistency in your lifestyle with how you treat your music. So instead of having one day a week where you start stressing out about how to become a famous musician, focus more on having 1 hour every day where maybe you create a list of how you're going to move forward, and then start pitching to playlists and things like that. And making music often happens randomly, so the making of the music can be much more random, but I think having like a consistent amount of time every day that you're actually working, not just having fun, but actually working on getting the music out there to where it can be heard, is really important, because there are just parts of this that aren't as fun, but they're really important. Yeah.
Great. Damien, do you want to give your one tip?
Mine would be find your artist community of friends that you can work together with, because they're going to share you all the inside advice, their contacts. You can go to networking events together. You can work together, and that momentum is just, you can't beat it. And I think that support network is really important, because you just can't give up. You just got to keep going, and that's like kind of part of the advice too. Just don't give up. You'll always look back and be like, oh my gosh, that's so cringe or whatever, but just like, don't try to also be a perfectionist. Just like, put things out, try things, don't be afraid to make mistakes. So many artists you'll talk to be like, oh, I'm a visual artist too, and I want to like get a $10,000 music video budget. I don't have the money for like all these things, like where they just could, okay, we can do a visual music video like in 12 months time. Maybe you've got some momentum happening, but what can we do now? And sometimes, artists will just hold on to things for too long, and then nothing happens during that period. So it's better just to like start things, to get the ball rolling, because you just don't know what the next thing is. And it's just about that constant awareness within the industry of like, I keep seeing this artist's name pop up again and again, and then slowly those wins start coming in. Editorially on playlists, you're getting support tours, radio stations are adding you, artists want to get in studio sessions with you. But if you haven't started that ball rolling by releasing music, and maybe it's not your best thing, you're not too proud of it, you're not going to see those things come.
Definitely.
And I would say, speaking of getting the ball rolling, I think it's important that you look at your perspective globally and not locally. The times where you had to do something locally in order to get prioritized internationally is long gone. I think it's important that you look for finding these small pockets, just like Damien also said, in particular from radio, and that pocket might be in a completely different country you didn't know of, because people are also driven by genres more than where you are from. So if you're an Icelandic indie band, it might connect quite a lot with an audience in Switzerland. But if you think already you have to do well in Iceland before you can get abroad, then you're missing out on huge opportunities, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's also the power of platforms such as Warm and Groover that allow you to find new audiences in location you wouldn't think of in the first place. Dorian, one final advice before we jump into a final Q&A.
You had so many great pieces of advice. I don't know if I have anything else to say. But I'll add again on the fact that being an artist can be hard because of the roller coaster of emotions that you can have any time of day, and especially because most of the time, like something that someone is going to say about your music, it's going to touch you personally. So I would say like one piece of advice is like, if you feel you have tough skin, good for you. Like, keep on building on that. As Damien was saying about cringe, like if you feel it's cringy, but you like it, like sometimes cringe can be a really good marketing tool. Actually, like finding your groove and something you're like comfortable with, and you can have fun. And I think it's a good piece of advice, is like keep on finding what makes you have fun, because it's going to be a long road. So it's super important on that to make sure you find these pockets of things where you have fun with. It can be like playing on stage. It can be something else. It can be like spending time in the studio. There's of course a lot of things you need to do that might not be what you prefer, and at the same time you need to find like a good balance between what you love and what you don't love the most. But it's very hard to find a balance, like as a human being generally, but as an artist it's even tougher. So I would say like, yes, don't forget to have fun.
And enjoy the journey for sure.
Can I just say something really, really quick? I would say as well, tough reality is, as an independent artist, you probably already know, it's expensive, and you have to be willing to see that's a reality. And you're not alone if you're feeling like it's really expensive. It is, and especially if you want to step up to that next level to get cut through at that kind of the industry standard. So look at grant funding options in your local areas. It could be council funding, national funding. There's so much money out there for independent artists and programs you can look into.
That's a really good piece of advice, indeed. And especially if you think you're good with administrative stuff, or if you have someone in your band who is, definitely like put that person in charge of like trying to find money with this. Like it's just sometimes like it's something very important with grants is that there are some grants that everybody knows about, everybody's applying, and they're hard to get. Some of them, not a lot of people know about them, but it's also not a lot of people go and fill out all the forms and stuff. And some of them have like an 80% success rate sometimes. So it's just about like, okay, if you really need that money to keep on going on with your projects, maybe you can spend this like 1 or 2 more hours to like fill out that file. I know that in France, there are a lot of grants like this that they tell us like the people who go to filling out the entire form, they will get the grant. So it's like, yeah, it's really, it's important to know.
And if you have any access needs, you can talk to the grant bodies, and they can actually pay for you to have a professional grant writer write your grants for you. So put that tip in there too.
Great. Well, I think we're starting to get a few questions. So if that's fine by you, we'll jump into a short Q&A. So thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. Feel free to ask all the questions you may have to our speakers. So I'm seeing a first question, so I'm going to display them.
I'm just going to interrupt just one thing, is that if you're on Twitch and you don't have an account, so you cannot like comment, please know that we are back on YouTube. So there are people who are not on the same link, but if you go on YouTube on the Groover channel, you'll find it. You can find it in the comment as well. If it's easier for you to post comments because you can't on Twitch, you can go back on YouTube. So if we'll making you travel between websites like this, but it can be a way for you to
join us on YouTube. So I do see a first question. I think this one will be for you, Jasper, about the radio. So the question is basically, how do I know if my radio broadcasts are creating some real fans, and how do I capitalize on the radio promotion to gain some fans?
I mean, I would say one of the first things I would do was to contact the radio and figure out who or where you have the support from, because if you're played, on some stations 6 to 10 days, 10 times a day, that's like A or B rotation. So that means that there's, heavy prioritization. So if you can, get closer with these guys or these people that support you and find the specific people, then you have huge opportunities to do all kinds of things with them, a mixtape maybe, or interviews, or social media takeover, or music recommendation interview, or there's a lot of opportunities, but it all starts with the personal contact. And with this kind of support from certain radios, that's really valuable. And then if you get this on several radios, you can basically bring this information together and then use that, for example, with your Spotify pitching or other pitching options, where let's say you have 5 channels, five college radios playing your music, let's say an average 8 times a day, that's super valuable. And then also, I think in particular with college radio, it's worth to remember that that's a very specific target group. They are all more or less in the same age group. They like the same football team, probably. They like the same beer. So there's lots of opportunities that comes with in particular college radio place.
Great, thank you. We have another question this time, I guess more. I mean, you all talked about playlist promotion a bit, but we have questions on the best tips for music promotion, especially on playlists. So how do I work on those streams? How do I get integrated in your new playlist, into Weekly Radar, into different kind of playlists?
I have a tip. Maybe go on, Damien.
Yeah. Oh, no, sorry, I didn't say. No, you go.
One tip that I can give you, if you want to identify some playlists that can be interesting for you, especially independent playlists, which are the ones you can reach out to. One way to identify some of these playlists that can generate a lot of streams for you, possibly, is to go on your Spotify app on desktop, not on mobile. It will work only on desktop if you're using on desktop, and the app not in your browser. And if you go on the profile of an artist and you slide down, scroll down and you go in the discovered on section, please note, you will know that on that profile, you will see the top 50 playlists that are generating the most streams for that artist in the last 30 days. So it could be a great source of inspiration to see what kind of playlists have added some artists that are in your scene or that you feel you're related with. In terms of style. So if you do that, you can really, some of them might be editorial playlists, but if you aim at for artists that are between like 10,000 and 200,000 monthly listeners, you will find a lot of independent playlists there. You might find their contact info, might find some information that can help you identify them on Instagram or Facebook to get in touch with. It's also what we do at Groover to identify some great independent playlists. So you might find them on Groover as well to get in touch with them and be sure they listen to your music. But it could be a good way for you to identify what are the playlists you want to aim for and try to get in touch with them. I know it's been successful on our end. Maybe a lot of them won't be answering you or offering to pay for placement, which is something we really strongly advise against. It's like if a playlist tells you need to pay to be placed and you see they're not selective, there's a big chance they would be like fake playlists or voted playlists. So please be super careful about that. And if I can give you another advice, you can use two tools. One is called Artist Tools. The other one is called Is It a Good Playlist? I'm going to post them in the comment as well. And these tools can help you identify and evaluate if the playlists are safe, and you can get in touch with them. You also see the ones that are available in Groover, for example. And they're super useful tool to see if like a place is safe to get in touch with. So this way you can build, if you want to really get into that, you can build your whole ecosystem of like how you get in touch with playlists. So it was a bit long, but it was like, I tried to be very practical.
And we have not. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Dan.
I'll just say one thing that's a bit, well, sometimes I get touched on, but if you are an artist that works on a big body of work like an EP or an album, those are really great when it comes to pitching. And I would say, let's say it's November now. So if I had an EP and my first single was coming out, I'd probably want the EP out in April next year. And you actually want to be pitching that whole project at once, and you want that whole EP ingested into the system. And when you're pitching it, you can tell Spotify or Apple Music, hey, these are my release dates coming up to this EP launch. And you want that kind of EP to be a few months away, because they can kind of then be like, great, oh my God, we love all these songs in the EP. We're going to get behind this whole project, every single you put out. So kind of you can tell them the plan ahead of time, and that's really useful. Like these people need to curate what they're going to focus on, especially independent artists. Like I did this strategy with an independent artist with 1,000 followers, and on EP release, we got the homepage takeover on Spotify and had banners from their support, and they kind of really looking out for these artists. But the trick we did was like, we're just like communicating ahead of time. So I think if you are working on a body of work and you have got an EP coming, look to maybe ingest that whole EP from the beginning and have that all in their system so they can kind of map out their support from the get-go.
Definitely. And we do have another question also linked to playlisting, but someone is asking what other platform is interesting to look at except Spotify. That we talk a lot about Spotify, but are there other ones that could be interesting to work on? I don't know. Damien, do you want to go?
Yeah, like it depends. Like if you're just like maybe see where fan base sits. Like if you're kind of more an alternative musician and a real singer-songwriter, like Qbuzz is a great one. That's like for high quality audio files, and kind of it's a smaller platform. So some of these smaller platforms are a lot easier to talk to and have open doors and are really artist supportive friendly. If you're working in dance music, like Beatport are really artist friendly and great to talk to. Like so, look at the smaller ones. I mentioned before, Twitch have like artist partner programs where they pay artists like salaries to be on their platform. All these things. There's so many opportunities out there. So kind of researching to find out what your niche might be specific to, and seeing what audiences might have and what might be best. And sometimes you just don't know. It's just by chance that you might pop off on YouTube or something.
Yeah, I was going to say YouTube is an obvious one because you can get some organic views on it. SoundCloud as well can be like neglected sometimes, but you can also get a lot of organic views. I would recommend always like uploading your track on your profile as well, knowing that your distributor can match it, and they can like content ID it and monetize it. And at the same time, you can generate organic views. They have a new program, I think, where they boost your track to like a total like new audience to try to get you your first like listeners, which is interesting. And also like if you're in more the indie space, but also some other spaces, Bandcamp can be interesting. I have a lot of artists that are telling me that they're getting, even if they don't have physical merch, they have artists that are downloading their tracks and they're getting some revenue from Bandcamp, and they're usually getting a bigger share compared to other platforms. And then there are like some localized ones. So it depends where you're located, but I know that in France, Deezer is a big one. It's like half the subscribers there are on Deezer. It's hard to pitch your music directly on Deezer, but it's important to keep in mind that when you're communicating your music to an audience, it's important to use the smart link with all the different platforms, because you don't know where your audience is listening to music. And especially in France, for example, if you only communicate about like the Spotify link, you might have a lot of people that won't be able to listen to your music. But if you communicate about with the smart link and you have your link to YouTube, to Deezer, to Apple, to Spotify, you might be able to have everyone listen to your music this way. I know you can also pitch your music on Amazon Music, so it could be interesting. Apple Music for artists, it's good to like claim your profile, because you can also get your Shazam stats. So you might notice some peaks sometimes. Sometimes it means that your music was broadcasted on the radio. So it's interesting. Of course, like just to like wrap it up, Spotify is the one you can impact the most. It's where the most people are. It's the one that's the most key. But other platforms can be worth looking for. Yeah, Cobas. Yeah. Cobas is interesting as well, and they might be open to like pitching, and they're also interesting, especially if you're like doing indie music as well. Yeah.
Cool. And maybe one last question, if we have time, and then I think we'll wrap it up. It's a bit different, but it's a question on curating your own playlist instead of trying to contact other that may exist. I don't know if it's something that you've been doing with the artists you're each working anew, Owen also. So does anyone wants to take that question? Owen, maybe. Oh, sorry.
No, you go, Owen.
Or is it something that you've been doing yourself, or not?
A little bit. I think for me, it's not really like so much a tool for promoting my own music. It'd be more just like a tool for communicating kind of who I am as like an artist and also as a listener. I think it can be a helpful way to give people insight into maybe some of the inspiration behind my music. But I think if the goal is to try to like use it to promote your own music, I'm not sure. I haven't tried to do that before, so I'm not sure I have too much insight on that. But it's cool to be able to communicate like where your influences are coming from and things like that.
Well, yeah, I've managed like playlists with like 500,000 followers, networks, and there's a lot of digital advertising that goes into growing that, and a lot of ad spend, and it's kind of very deliberate, and it's an investment into growing your streaming network, but also the power you have playlist swaps. But maybe, you know, if you have something that's getting moderate attention, you can partner with platforms like Groover and be a curator on there, and that just gives you really great marketing to the artist world, and you can do a lot of swaps and everything and grow your exposure that way. But it's a very long-term strategy developing a playlist network, I'd say. But something you should definitely start and just chip away at.
Yeah, and the very simple thing with this is like, if you have released already a lot of music and a lot of albums or EPs, you should definitely have like a playlist with like all your music, like discography or something like this, that you can promote and also pin on your artist pick on Spotify when you don't have like a very fresh release. It's a good tool, and you'll see that if you have people who really listen to your music, they will follow that playlist. They might listen to it a lot, and can be an interesting source of streams for you.
Great. Well, I don't think we have any more questions, so I think we'll wrap it up. Thanks a lot to the four of you for joining us today and giving us all your tips on those very interesting topic. And thanks for joining and watching us.